Howdy there, folks. James from politicalfriar.com coming at you again. Today, I want to talk to you about a candidate for the Republican Party's presidential nomination in the primary. And this candidate's got almost 100% name recognition. His name has been famous for decades before he was even on the political scene. Everyone knows it. And he stands on the shoulders of great conservative giants, people who have shaped the American system since at least the beginnings of the Republican Party and its first scions in people like, General Grant. He based his candidacy on first being anti-corporate America. He says every Republican president has been nominated by Chase National Bank, not the people. And, despite being a Republican, he recognizes that entitlements are a reality and they're here to stay. He's not willing to die on the hill of opposing the New Deal, Social Security benefits or others, even fully funding federal housing for the poor. But he is indifferent to Europe and NATO. Actually, he's not indifferent. He's against NATO. He thinks that the United States ought not do anything in Europe. He doesn't see a meaningful distinction between Britain, France, Germany, Russia. They're all just Europeans set to kill each other and no concern of the Americans. He's anti-interventionism everywhere outside of the Western Hemisphere. I mean, perfectly fine with invading Panama or invading Argentina or any other country in the Western Hemisphere should that become important. I mean, Venezuela being a primary target because of its resources. But outside of the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, who cares? Well, one exception. He cares about Israel. He wants to send direct aid to Israel and he wants to support them militarily. But outside of Israel, there's really no one that is worthy of having an alliance with the United States. He's pro-tariff. He believes that it should be the fundamental policy of the United States to wall off its economy as thoroughly as it walls off its territory. It's unfair to the American workers to have them have to compete with foreigners who will just work for less and have lower standards for their very existence. And Americans shouldn't lower themselves to that. And the only way to protect Americans from having to compete with foreigners is to not let them. He's anti-China. Well, there is one country out there that's worth opposing, and that's China. They're scary. And Asia really is the future. He's indifferent to civil rights. He's not racist, but if he can win southern states by letting southern states abuse their black populations, that's fine. That political calculation is actually just for the greater good because it causes civil peace. We're still integrating the southern states from their rebellion, after all, and you can't really tell them what to do just because they lost the war. That won't work. And he's opposed to integrating the military. Again, not because he's racist, not because he thinks black people are lesser. He's against integrating the military because he's afraid that it will create a less cohesive force. It will make it less powerful, less effective if you have anything but white males in the military. Of course, I'm speaking about Robert Taft and his run for the nomination in 1952. He ended up losing to General Dwight Eisenhower, but this was his platform. And this is your grandfather's Republican Party. Now, if you hear some rhymes of history here between that Republican Party and today's Republican Party, it's no mistake. These Republican policies have been bouncing around in the background since Ulysses S. Grant. And there has been a split in the Republican Party along these lines. I'd call them the Lincoln Republicans and the Grant Republicans. The Lincoln Republicans being, frankly, more ideological, thinking that the world can be a better place by using the power of the government to make it a better place, to enforce civil rights, to oppose tyranny elsewhere. And the Grant Republicans saying, no, 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 our power is more important than any civil rights. Those can be worked out over multiple generations, and we don't really have to do anything about it. In Europe, there's no point in Europe. And America's really should just be a fortress, a walled off society that is better off without engaging the world. Now, this idea of Fortress America, you might even call it America First, was thoroughly discredited in a single day. December 7th, 1941, a day that will live in infamy. That wing of the Republican Party was destroyed. And despite Taft's attempt to revive it in 1952, wiser heads prevailed. Dwight Eisenhower was not a partisan. He didn't have a party throughout World War II. He was neither Republican nor Democrat. In 1952, both parties recruited him. He was seen as a way to get a political win, but he also wasn't so politically nailed down that either party had any idea what he really believed. And that's because he didn't have strong views on domestic policies. He was actually an independent. He didn't oppose the New Deal. He didn't even have strong views on tariffs. But he did have strong views on the role of the United States in the world. And that's why he became a Republican, because he couldn't let Robert Taft's dangerous anti-interventionist policies to continue. See, they just got done fighting World War II. We're talking about a conflict where 100 million people or more lost their lives. That is a conflict that is incomprehensible by any human living today except for the very few veterans who survive. And I know I'm breaking Godwin's law by bringing up World War II in this context. But in this context, I think it's right. The Republican Party is struggling to remember the lessons learned from the early 20th century. It turns out that just ignoring the world doesn't mean the world will ignore you. Now, we learned this on 9/11, 2001. We learned this repeatedly through our history, and we are, as Republicans anyway, really trying to forget these lessons, trying to imagine that the world is as it is not. But it's really tempting, isn't it? You have a strong person who will protect you and tell you that you don't have to pay a price for that protection. It's free. That's false. Anyway, it's just a thought. Let me know how wrong I am in the comments down below. Please like, subscribe, share this video, and I really appreciate it. Thanks.